Hello, my people. It is your boy Toyin. I'm back again with another video. In today's video, what I'm going to talk about is what it's actually like joining a new project. So, I am a senior software engineer in the UK, and I work for a big IT consultancy. So, as a consultant, you're working on different projects. And in this video, I want to talk about what it's actually like when you join a new project, and also what it's like moving companies, right, between different IT consultancies. So hopefully you'll enjoy the video. Don't be a hater as always. Like, share, and subscribe. And let's get into this. Okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of context, right? I'm a software engineer in the UK. I work in the IT/digital transformation consultancy space and have done so for the last 5 years. And in that time, I've worked for 3 different companies and worked on 4 different projects, including 3 large government projects. So I worked at the Home Office, I've worked at DEFRA, and I'm currently now working at the Planning Inspectorate. So those are 3 large UK government departments. So I'm a bit of a nomad. So I hope I'm in a position to be able to provide a little bit of insight into what it's like when you move from one project to another project in those first few weeks on a new project. So first, let me talk about what it's like moving into an IT consultancy company, right? So you're first joining, whether you've been in a consultancy background before or you haven't, those first few weeks. You join a new company as a software developer. You might be joining as a tester as well. You might be joining in DevOps, something in tech. And probably, most likely, almost definitely, the first week is going to be just general onboarding, right? In that first week, what that means is you're going to learn about the company, the culture, and some of the HR processes. And that's mainly the important bit, learning the HR processes. So how do you submit sick leave? How do you submit annual leave? Who do you go to for training? Who's your manager, for example? And other benefits that the company might provide. So those are general things. And after that, if you are a junior engineer, you're probably going to join some kind of graduate or junior engineering academy. So in this academy is basically where they do the upskilling, because everyone comes in at different levels. Some people are self-taught, some have done computer science at university, some join through a boot camp, etc. Right? So to bring everyone up to a standard level, you're going to join this academy. In this academy, they'll upskill you on things such as Agile, Scrum, working in a team, creating tickets, writing user stories, and then also maybe some technologies that the company focuses on. So if the company generally works in Node or Java, you might do a little bit on that. Probably going to do a bit of testing, whether that's manual testing, smoke testing, end-to-end testing, and writing unit tests. And then you're also going to learn a little bit about DevOps and releases, right? So what kind of tools might you use? A little bit of Jenkins, maybe a little bit of Azure, AWS, those sort of things. So that's if you're a junior engineer. If you joined a new company or consultancy as a senior engineer or mid-level engineer, you're not going to need that upskilling, right? The assumption will be that you're coming in as an experienced head, so you're going to have those technical skills down already. So basically, you're going to join, you're going to have maybe a week of onboarding, of learning about the company, HR processes, have some presentations, etc. And then they're going to put you straight onto a project if they can, right? If there's a project available, which there should be if you're joining, then you're going to be put onto a project. So now let me talk about what it's like joining a new project, right? Because that can happen if you join a new company, or you could move projects. And what is it truly like? The first thing to talk about is initially joining a new project is boring. The initial week, 2 weeks is quite boring. Especially if you're joining a government project, it's going to take a little bit of time for them to set up your accounts. So you need to have specific government accounts. So as an example, I've worked at the Home Office, I've worked at DEFRA, I've worked at the Planning Inspectorate, and each time I have had a new email address for each of those departments. So they're going to set that up. Then they need to add you to the correct user group so that you have access to the correct environments and the correct resources on Azure or AWS or Jenkins or the correct website, etc. So all of that access and account setup, etc., might take a little bit of time. And really and truly, being honest, UK government projects notoriously slow with setting up accounts for the engineers, for the testers, etc. So it might take a week. During that week, what should you do? Or what are you expected to do? Basically, is to read through documentation. So read about the project. What is the actual project? What is the application? And what is it meant to actually do? Read about the technologies that they use, the tech stack, the frameworks used within it, what versions you're using of stuff. And then also learn a little bit about the processes within the specific project team that you're in, right? What is the software development lifecycle? When do you pick up a new ticket? Who refines the ticket to make sure it's ready to be picked up? When can you then pick it up? When you work on it, you move it into a new swim lane, etc., right? All of these things. Those are things that you should be learning within the first couple of weeks, just theoretically, to get your head around it. And then another thing you'll be doing a lot of is actually just being in calls and doing a whole lot of nothing, right? You're going to be in a lot of calls. They're going to invite you to all of the Scrum ceremonies. You might start getting invited to some of the defect calls or being invited to client talks, etc. So you're going to be in calls where you have basically nothing to contribute. But the whole point of those calls is that you get some FaceTime with different people, right? You might be getting FaceTime with the client, introduce yourself to the client, you're the new engineer of the team, etc. Or you might just be getting to know the wider team, right? So that's why you're in those calls. But it's very normal that you have nothing to contribute. You're not going to say anything. It's going to be very boring because, one, you're not going to really understand things because the wider context of things is missing on you. But you don't know what feature has just gone in and that's the reason they're having this defect call, etc., right? So a lot of context is going to be missing, but that is okay. That's fine. You're just expected to be in those calls, to kind of just sit there in the background, and eventually, as time goes on, you're going to start contributing to those calls. So that's what it's really like joining a new project, right? It's going to be boring at the beginning. You're going to be in calls just sitting there not doing anything. You're going to read a lot of documentation and watch a lot of knowledge transfer sessions. And it's going to take some time for them to even give you access in the first place. Pretty boring, but hey, that's how it goes. Now, as I've always mentioned on this channel, it's not just about me chatting shit, because I want you guys to take something away from the video, right? Some tips or something that you find useful aside from my experience. So a few tips on how to make a good impression when you join a new project. So I've done this 4 times now. Every time within the first month or so, I've made a good impression already and people start to trust me. And the reason for that is I have a few things that I keep in mind when I join a new project. Now, firstly, documentation. 99% of projects that you join initially will have some documentation, but there will be areas of the documentation that can be improved. And that is where you come in. As a new joiner to a project, you have fresh eyes and you'll be able to see certain points where the documentation falls down or is not as clear as it could be. So for example, you're joining a new project. They have documentation on how to set up your dev tooling, but they missed out, you need to install Docker Desktop, for example, or this version of Docker Desktop doesn't work with this version of Node or something like that. Right, you notice this because you're going through the actual process. Just make a note of it, write it down, and then update the documentation and let people know that you've updated this documentation, right? Because you've noticed something was missing or something could be improved. That's number one, making a good impression. Update documentation or look at the documentation. And that's something you can basically do immediately when you join a new project. Number 2, ask questions and figure out who in your team is best placed to answer those questions, or who tends to be the person that you see speak the most or get involved the most, etc. And make a little bit of a right angle towards them, ask them a few questions, etc. When joining a new project, it's very common for the new joiners to be quiet for a long while, right? So you might be confused about certain terminology being used or certain processes and user flows, etc. You need to ask questions, and you need to ask questions also to the right people, because asking questions about user flows, for example, to a developer doesn't make as much sense as asking it to a business analyst, because they are more inclined to know about those sort of things, right? So ask questions early and ask them to the right people so you can build a good relationship with them. Third thing, learn the user flows and the journey of the application and the business logic. Now, when you first join a project, because you might not have access fully established, etc., you might not have access to everything. Maybe this is limited, but you can read documentation as much as they have. And what you need to do and spend a lot of time doing, and it's very boring, very mind-numbing, but you need to do this, is learn the user flows. Learn the different journeys that people can take in the application, learn what is supposed to happen when they click on certain buttons, learn what is the newest kind of feature that the team has implemented, learn the most recent feature, for example, that's gone into production, and learn that flow as well, because bugs will generally come out of that, so you want to know that flow, etc. Right? Spend some time learning the business logic for the application, because it will put you in good stead when you do have access and you can look at the code and you can do a side-by-side comparison of, okay, I'm on this page and this is what the code looks like. Now I'm move on to the next page and this is what the code looks like, and this is what it's doing in the back end, sending stuff to the database, etc., etc. And those are the 3 tips I've basically got for making a good first impression when you join a new project. Hopefully this video has given you a little bit of insight of what it's actually like joining an IT consultancy and joining a new project and what you can expect in those first few weeks. As always, like, share and subscribe to the videos, and I hopefully see you in the next one. Bye.